Okay, President Whistler, I think we can go ahead and get started.
All right, let me call to order this meeting of the City of Bloomington Plan Commission for August 9th.
Recording in progress.
2021. Let's begin by calling the roll, please.
Okay, Burrell,
Here.
Kate. I got an email saying she was going to be late. Herrera,
Here.
Kinsey. Here. Cockrum,
Here.
Sandberg,
Here.
Seaboard,
Here.
St. John,
Here.
and Whistler.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing that we do have a quorum, we will proceed. First order of business here is to approve some minutes. We have minutes from the July 12th, 2021 meeting. Are there any questions or additions or corrections to the July minutes? If not, do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
I would move approval of the July 12th minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving those minutes, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, minutes are approved. We'll move on now to reports, resolutions, and communications. Are there any reports or communications from staff tonight?
Jackie Scanlon, Development Services Manager. I will note that Enright Randolph is also here, our representative from the County Plan Commission. So thank you, Tron, for being here, of course. I would say thank you, everyone, for your patience while we are on this cusp of hybrid versus virtual meetings. We have a member of staff at City Hall right now in case anyone were to show up there. So people can still participate and watch the meeting. But because the governor extended the order to encourage, to allow for virtual meetings, that is why we are operating mostly from our virtual playbook tonight. So next month, notices for the meetings for next month have gone out in such a fashion that we will be able to do them entirely virtually or as hybrid, depending upon whether or not the governor extends the order. So we will be able to kind of know that more cleanly in advance. So we just wanted to let you all know that, and that is the only update I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Any other reports or communications from commissioners? Okay. We do have 3 petitions that are being continued to the September 13th meeting. Those are SP 18-21, Overlook on 3rd LLC. This is a request for site plan review for 175 unit multifamily apartments at 4550 East 3rd Street. Also SP 19-21, Strasser Construction Co. Inc. Request for site plan approval for a 16-unit multifamily structure at 1300 North Lincoln. And DP 20-21, Letso Rigert Cooper James petitioner, preliminary plat approval for 33 single-family lots at 3111 South Walnut Street Pike. So those 3 petitions will be continued to the September 13th meeting. And Jackie, my understanding is these are continued by staff, will not require any action by the commission tonight.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. There is one petition on our consent agenda tonight. If you're not familiar with consent agenda, this is typically small or otherwise non-controversial projects that do not require a full hearing. So we will simply vote on the consent agenda without debate unless someone desires to have a full hearing. The One petition on the consent agenda tonight is DP 17-21. IU Health Southern Indiana Physicians is the petitioner. This is a request for secondary plat amendment of the third replat of parcels E and F of Canada Farm subdivision phase 1 to combine lots 7 and 8. This is property at 2606 East Creekside Drive. Are there any commissioners who would like to have a full hearing on that petition, or shall we move on with the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, let's have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda with the one item.
Second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Let's have the clerk call the roll, please.
Okay, Herrera,
Yes.
Kinsey,
yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Seahor,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
and Whistler,
Yes.
and Burrell.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe that passes 8-0. So we're now on to our petitions for full hearing this evening. We have 2 petitions up tonight. The first is SP 21-21. This is a request for major site plan approval for a new 64-unit mixed-use structure. This is a property at 1730 South Walnut Street. Our second petition will be ZO 22-21, a request for a rezone with Wheeler Mission Ministries as the petitioner. So we'll start with SB 2121. I believe we have Keegan Gulick here to present the case.
Yes.
Are you with us, Keegan?
Yes, I am. Just one moment. Can you all see my screen?
Yep, we got you.
All right. Okay, so as you said, this is for the property located at 1730 South Walnut Street. The petitioner is requesting major site plan review for a new 64-unit multifamily dwelling facility and commercial area in the MC zoning district. The property is currently zoned MC. The comprehensive plan designates this property in the Regional Activity Center district. Currently on the site, there is a vacant commercial property and surface parking lot. The proposed land uses are multifamily dwellings and commercial space. The property is surrounded by commercial space to the north, south, and east, and then Switchyard Park to the west. And yeah, just to reiterate, this is what they're requesting, a major site plan review for 64-unit multifamily development. This is coming before you today because it has more than 50 dwelling units, which triggers major site plan review. And they're also utilizing the Tier 2 affordable housing incentives, which also requires a review from the Plan Commission. This is in the packet, of course, but here's just an overview of their site plan. And we also have some architectural renderings here as well. Just to go over the site plan, for the setbacks in the MC zoning district, they require a 15-foot front setback and 7 side and rear setback. The site plan demonstrates compliance with these setbacks. The maximum height in the MC zoning district is 4 stories, not to exceed 50 feet. But because they're using the Tier 2 affordable housing incentives, they're allowed to increase their height by up to 2 floors, not to exceed 24 feet. And this development has 5 stories. The maximum impervious surface coverage in the MC zoning district is 60%, which they have demonstrated. For environmental concerns, we understand that some parts of the site may require environmental remediation if developed. A copy of the Environmental Commission's memorandum is also included with this report. For landscaping, their site plan has demonstrated compliance with landscaping requirements. They're required to put 1 canopy tree every 40 feet that abuts the public right of way. Their site plan shows 5 street trees along South Walnut Street. Oh, and of course, they'll have to submit a full landscaping plan before a grading permit's issued and the condition of approval has been added for that as well. For access to the site, they're going to be utilizing a access easement along South Walnut Street that's already existing on the property. For parking, there's not a minimum parking requirement because they're not adjacent to the R3 zoning district, but they are providing 56 ground floor parking spaces and a parking garage on the first floor. And there will also be a surface parking lot with 12 spaces. The maximum allowance for commercial uses in the MC zoning district is 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet, which would give them a max of 12 spaces for the commercial space that's also on this site. Just to go over the Tier 2 affordable housing incentives, they require that at least 60% of the gross floor area of the building be dedicated to residential units, and that 7.5% of the dwelling units are income restricted permanently to households earning below 120% of HUD AMI, and a minimum of 7.5% of dwelling units are income restricted permanently to households earning below 80% of HUD AMI for Monroe County, and developers working with hand to ensure compliance with these requirements. Of the 64 units that they are proposing, 48 are affordable housing. For architecture, the building will be finished with a mix of stone veneer, metal, fiber cement siding, and concrete masonry. The exterior facade of the building incorporates wall elevation projections, a regular pattern of glass on the first floor, and changes in the facade to comply with the pattern requirements. The flat roof, if you notice, also has parapets on the supporting walls to meet the roof design requirements. And there's a pedestrian entrance along South Walnut Street for the commercial space and a separate entrance for the dwelling units as well. In conclusion, we are recommending that approval of this petition is compliant with the UDO, also compliant with the goals of the comprehensive plan and the regional activity district. This district in the comprehensive plan gives some guidance for land use in this area, such as less intense commercial uses should be developed adjacent to residential areas to buffer the impacts of such development. Multifamily residential and office uses could likewise serve as transitional elements. So that's kind of what's happening here. Redevelopment within the district should be encouraged to grow vertically with the possibility of 2- or 3-story buildings to accommodate denser office development, residential multifamily, structured parking, and improved multimodal connectivity. And the goal of redevelopment in this area is to create a few high density retail and office and residential and activity nodes. So with that, the Planning and Transportation Department recommends that the Plan Commission adopt the proposed findings and approve SP 21-21 with the following conditions. 1, that the project is approved pursuant to compliance with the Tier 2 affordable housing incentive criteria. 2, that the petitioner will provide the required number of bicycle parking spaces on the site plan prior to a grading permit. And 3, that a landscape plan that meets all UDO requirements, including required street trees, must be submitted and approved prior to issuance of a grading permit. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Keegan. Is there a representative of the petitioner who would like to add anything tonight?
I believe Jeff Ryan is here.
Should be
Yes.
able to unmute. Yep.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Ryan, Vice President of Development for Real America Development. I think Keegan did a great job of summarizing the development, so I don't have anything to add to what he had, but I'm available for any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ryan. Are there any questions from commissioners, either for the petitioner or for staff? Commissioner Kinsey.
Thank you for the presentation today. I have a couple of questions. One is first to staff. Keegan, I don't know if you or Jackie can tell us a little bit more about the first condition for approval that states the Tier 2 affordable approval pursuant to. What does that entail? This is more of a logistic question than it is really anything about the details of the affordable housing agreement. Can you say, what does that mean in terms of the final approval?
Sure, I may ask if Jackie can weigh in a little more as far as the.
Sure, sorry, I'm trying to get down to the language here.
Oh, no worries.
Going
Thanks.
slowly, just a sec.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. I realize
okay.
this is more of a kind of a more logistical question about kind of what happens or how is that done?
Sure. So the project is approved pursuant to compliance with Tier 2 affordable housing incentive criteria. So that was the criteria that Keegan went over with the 7.5% of units at each of the 2 levels of income. And that is outlined also in the petitioner statement. And then he describes it obviously in the report. And so basically, I believe that they have to come to an agreement with the city through the Housing and Neighborhood Development Department. And then I believe a reportable commitment is, a zoning commitment is recorded to the effect of what they have said they're going to do here, especially, I mean, because they do get the additional units and height. So indicating that they understand that they have to do those things in order to build this building. So that once the building is built, for example, if they were to sell it to someone else and we still had the same rules, that they would have to still abide by the percentages listed in the code.
Okay. Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I was just, you know, I don't know. We haven't reviewed in a while that had it that specified in the conditions. And I just wanted to make sure we understood what is it that we were essentially requiring.
Yes, so we wanted to make sure that it's clear to you all and clear to the petitioner and any future owners that this project does not meet our by right requirements. It is allowed to be built at the scale requested because it meets the incentive requirements.
Right.
And so those incentive requirements will have to carry on into the future.
Okay, that's great. All right, thank you for that. And then if I can go on is with a couple of other questions here. They get into a little bit more detail about the proposal itself. One is about the mention of potential environmental remediation. Can you say a little bit more? I mean, it sounds like it's speculative at this point, and obviously if there is something that's of concern, it needs to be remediated. But can you say a little bit more about what that might be at this space? What's the concern?
Sure. Yeah, so this area, as other areas along here, obviously, this used to be along a railroad track, and there were different businesses and yards along this area that were supportive of that and used that facility. And so a number of these properties require environmental review for toxins in the soil. So I believe the petitioner has undergone that review. And then this is a little bit out of my bailiwick, but there are certain thresholds of development that will require that remediation be done. I believe at this site, most of any contamination that's been identified is on the western portion of the property, which is not being disturbed. But if there were to be contaminants on the eastern portion, then they would just have to follow the rules of, I believe, of IDEM, Department of Environmental Management for the state. And that is something we will track with them, especially because this is a city supported project, and make sure that any requirements for remediation of that soil before the project were to go up be met.
Okay. Great. All right. Okay. Yeah, sorry. These are a little tasky things, but I just want to make sure that I'm clear about some of the more concerning elements. The other thing, maybe this goes to the petitioner, I noticed the number of units, and I guess I just want to maybe highlight this a little bit in terms of the structure of the units. So there looked like there are several of 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1-bedroom, 1-bath. I think I saw a 2-bedroom that the text got pretty small there, and I don't know if I was straining my eyes enough to see it, but it looks like there's a variety of design on these structures. And I appreciate that. So I wanted to highlight the variety of forms of housing and just draw that to your attention. I don't know if you have any comments on if all of those specs are correct, that those are the options.
Yes, we do have 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom apartments here. So we can hit a wide range of future residents. And another part of that is we are specifically setting aside 20% of the affordable units for clients of Stone Belt. So this will be a community integration deal in addition to being mixed income and mixed use.
Thank you. I was hoping you would mention that. I think that's a really important dimension of this project, and suspected that perhaps some of the 1 bedroom and 1 bath were part of that commitment to Stone Belt. I think that's a great feature of this integrated housing.
It could be some of the 3 bedrooms also if they need roommate situations. So it isn't just the smaller units. It is the variety of those to give both the clients of Stone Belt options and other people.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's an important thing to highlight. So often we see proposals that are 4 and 5 bedroom units. So it's nice to see this variety offered. Okay, so here's my one kind of more substantive question about the access via Walnut. And I wonder if you can talk, or I don't want to put this on, well, it's probably a mix of staff and petitioner, about turn lanes or any accommodations that are going to be made to Walnut to make the access to this property safe and reasonable, so that we're not creating backups. I didn't quite see that in the design, and I wonder if that could be pointed out. If there's any sort of, I didn't see any, I don't know if there is an easement going north on Walnut, so to allow a right turn into the space. I'm sorry, going south on Walnut to allow a right turn. If there's any change in what's happening on Walnut.
I can speak to that some. I mean, I think it wasn't raised during a development review committee that there would be traffic or congestion concerns. And, Jackie, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I mean, I think as the project continues to go forward, we'll be looking at that. I don't know if Jeff has anything to add as far as the design.
Sorry, that's all I was going to say as well, was that we did obviously take this project to development review committee. For those who aren't familiar, that's getting together with other members of city departments, including engineering and public works. And there was not an issue raised about whether or not this area of Walnut could support this type of use at this density.
And I think if we did put a right turn lane in, it really cuts into the sidewalk and the landscaping in that area that I think is probably more important, especially with having the clients of Stone Belt being there that are not likely to be driving also. It actually, from a use standpoint or a load on the roads, will not be equivalent to other 64 unit apartments.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Seabour.
Thank you. I've got, I think, 2 general topics I want to ask a couple questions about. And one is, we just kind of started to allude to it, but the sidewalk along Walnut Street. I think on the site plan, it showed a 6-foot wide sidewalk. And I think I was in some meetings earlier where I think it was one of those development review committee meetings where it was mentioned that the sidewalk requirement there was 10 feet. And I'm just curious if the development team is planning on bringing the sidewalk into compliance with the standards.
Yes, we will be in compliance.
Okay, great. And sort of related to that, I noticed that there's, some grade issues, and so some steps. And I guess this is maybe more just a comment, but making sure that sometimes when there's stairs that they're offset a little bit from the sidewalk. Sometimes railings have to stick out, and we don't want those to pinch down the required sidewalk width. But that was more a comment. And then I guess the other question was, I guess, also related a little bit to access, but just as I reviewed the site plan, maybe if, I don't know if it's staff or the petitioner could kind of just walk us through for how the commercial parking lot will circulate, and then also just some of the parking spaces as I look at it with some parking, it's a little confusing, just to better explain how that space will be used, and also just while we're looking at that, understanding it's using a shared access or a public easement. But it looks like maybe there's a little work in that public easement. So on another property, just making sure that they're aware and supportive of those changes.
So our parking, so coming in off of Walnut, there is a shared access with the Meineke that is to our south. That is a access that has been in place, I believe, since this was originally developed. And so people for the commercial, if they're driving in, they can come in, and just before they would get to the building, they can turn right and then go in, and there's parking there, or they can just park directly into spaces there. And so it circulates completely without going into underneath the building.
Okay, I'll just add as well, the parking spaces along the southern end here, Keegan, if you can leave this up here, these 6 parking spaces here, they do appear to encroach on this easement, which is not on this property. So we will have to continue to discuss those spaces. If the property owner, which is the property owner to the south, allows for that encroachment, you know, then we can allow for these spaces. Otherwise, you know, we can't, this body can't approve parking spaces on a petition site that isn't part of the petition request. And if they can't meet code, then those will have to come up. So those spaces there along the southern edge, it might actually be 5, I can't remember, it's between 4 and 6 there. It's hard for me to see on my computer, sorry, that are accessed directly from the easement. There may be issues with those. So that is something that we don't have, I guess, full information on from the other property owner. So we will continue to work on that with Real America. I do think, I'm sorry, Andrew, what was your first question?
I guess my first one was, we talked, I think, about the sidewalk, but this was about that easement, and it looks like some improvements in it. And I guess as I look at this plan, I think we were told there were 12, but it's hard to know how many parking spaces are in that sort of middle piece, but it might be well more than 12.
Yeah, so I think the way that it's the drawing is a little odd, but these short little pieces here are like bumper stops. So it looks like it's stacked spaces, but it's like 1 space here and then 1 space. Oh, you can't see my mouse. This is hysterical. It looks like stacked spaces, but it's just spaces on the ends, and then the middle is open. We may have to lose those spaces on the south side because they obviously are showing them on someone else's property, and we also have parking setback requirements. So, you know, this body can't approve things that don't meet code. So if something like that were to get through, and if it was something substantial, we would bring it back to you and explain it. In this case, we do think if they can work out some sort of easement agreement with the property to the south, and then they can have these spaces and utilize them. But if not, then they will have to come off. So that is something that we will work out at the grading permit stage, and doesn't drastically affect the approval, because they're not required spaces. And again, also in the vein of what I just said about how you can't approve something that doesn't meet code, the 10-foot sidewalk will have to go in. We discussed earlier today putting it in as a condition of approval, but it was good to hear the petitioner acknowledge today that yes, they know they have to do that, and that is required through the transportation plan by code. And so that will have to be done as well.
Great, thank you.
Jackie, is that something that perhaps we should add as a condition of approval, so that it's
Sure,
clear
yeah.
that we're not approving this?
Yes, I
as
think that would be
shown?
cleaner. This is, yeah, something we were kind of hoping to get wrapped up before tonight. But I would say, yes, if we add a condition that those parking spaces on the along the southern property line, you know, or only conditionally approved if code compliant agreement can be met with the adjacent property owner, something along those lines. And you could also add the condition that the sidewalk shown actually is incorrect and has to meet transportation plan requirements, if you'd like.
Yeah, I think that would be wise. Is there someone on staff who might
Jillian,
be
you
able
see-
to
Yeah,
draft something
like you're writing
for
something.
us?
Okay. I think,
Yeah, you caught me taking notes here. Yeah, I agree. I think we do need a condition on both of these counts, but
Okay.
I don't know if someone can,
okay, I'll throw something together.
something
like
and
that?
Put it on the,
Yeah.
yeah, sure.
Perhaps Mr. Rooker could draft something for us. I think he's here with us.
Yeah, I'll throw something together and shoot it to Mike while you guys keep discussing.
Great.
Yeah,
Great,
we'll
okay.
work on something together.
Awesome. Thank you. Are there any other questions from commissioners? Okay. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions from commissioners, so we will go to public comment. If you would like to make comment on this petition, what you need to do is just look to the bottom of your screen, click on the reactions, and click on the button that says raise hand. And once your hand is raised, we will recognize you as best we can in the order that those hands were raised. Jackie will recognize you and invite you to unmute when it's your turn, and you'll have 5 minutes to make your comment. If you can't find the way to raise your virtual hand, feel free to also just click on the chat button, send a chat message, and we'll try to recognize you that way as well. Are there any public comments?
I don't see any, and I do not believe we have anyone in chambers waiting to comment on this petition either. Scott is there, correct me if I'm wrong.
All right, last call for public comment on SP 2121. Going once, going twice. Okay, so we are now back to the commission for any final discussion, any additional questions or comments or a motion.
I'll make some comments, but only out of an effort to stall for a few moments here to give Jackie and Mike more opportunity to compose what I think are an important conditional additions to this approval process. You know, I just want to say that I'm really happy to see the affordable commitment here and the integrated housing idea in this really desirable space. I think that this will make a great contribution not only to housing in our community, but it will also, I think, provide a high quality of housing given its proximity, well, its location in the park. My gosh, you can't get closer to this. It's a wonderful space and will really, I think, add a lot of great views and make that whole area on Walnut, which is currently not very attractive and interesting, very attractive and just look great for the improving and sprucing up that side of Walnut. You know, I did have one question that I didn't ask about the connectivity interior to the park and just kind of how close the building got to the nearest kind of park facility. And I don't know if it's kind of right on top of that, what looks like is close to the band shell or anything, but I mean, I think getting it close is wonderful. I just hope that there's at least enough separation to distinguish what's private and apartment space versus what's still kind of really public park space. I don't know, Keegan or Jeff, if you can comment on that. Is there a distinction in the space between what's really public and what really starts to get a little too close to people's homes?
Sure, I can maybe sort of answer that question. So, this is the property outlined in red, and their development goes as close to the property line as they can, the 7-foot setback. There's an aerial image here too. So, I think there will be some separation, but it will be pretty close. I'm not sure. I wish the aerial was up to date so you could see, obviously how the park looks now, but I don't think, I hope there wouldn't be any confusion as far as like where the park ends and where the private property begins. I don't know if Jeff has anything to add to that.
Jeff, I think you're still muted.
Okay, I couldn't unmute myself. So yes, I think it'll be very clear because on the north side of the property, where it's on the park property, there's a fairly significant hill there for some dirt that they needed to do. And then on the west side of the property is Clear Creek. So you either have to go up a fairly steep hill and come down onto our property or cross the creek. So our residents will access the property by going out to the 10-foot sidewalk and coming around to the entrance.
Great. Yeah, that's good. I like the natural separation with the creek as opposed to suggesting that somehow a fence would need to be put up or something. I think a creek is a good boundary there. Great. Good.
Should be just a minute and then I'll put the language up here. Sorry, we're almost done.
Jeff, I'd like to just follow up on that question. Does that mean that the residents on the sort of north facing units are going to have a view of that hill rather than a view of the park? Or is that hill going to be excavated partially? What's that gonna
so our residents start on the second floor because we have the ground floor parking. And so that puts the residential units above the hill.
Ah, okay. And then the looks like there's on your renderings, there's a bit of a terrace kind of at the corner. Is that am I seeing that correctly? That would be sort of an outdoor seating area that looks out over the park?
Yes, that's our common area. And so that'll be community room going out onto the terrace. So yeah, that we think it's going to be just wonderful space to overlook the park.
So is that first floor parking, is all of that below grade then on both sides?
The parking is at grade. So it's the building is a 4/1. So the ground floor at the sidewalk is the commercial space. And then everything on the ground floor at grade behind the commercial is parking, and then 4 levels of apartments above that.
Got it.
It also means that the hill on the north side will hide the parking from the park. So it does, multiple things, creating the separation, but also making it so when you're going in and out of the park, you won't see the parking in our property.
But on the west side, that parking level will be visible from the park?
A little bit. There's a significant grade separation because of the creek. And then also trees there. So it's not very visible.
Got it. All right. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? It looks like we do now have some draft language for a 4th condition of approval.
Yes.
Are you taking motions at this point,
Yeah.
Commissioner Whistler?
I would be happy to take a motion at this
Great.
point. Yeah.
Great. I'd like to move approval of SP 21-21 with the 4 conditions as recommended by the Plan Commission.
Wholehearted second.
So just to clarify.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I can go ahead and read. Or yeah, will you read the 4th one, Brad?
Well, yes, I will.
Thank you.
Just want to make sure that your motion is that we adopt the proposed findings and approve SP 2121.
Yes, yes, yes.
The three
yes.
the 3 conditions included in the packet, And the fourth condition, which is that the southernmost row of parking shown over the property line is not approved unless the petitioner comes to an agreement with the property owner. Regardless of any agreement reached with the property owner, all parking spaces must comply with UDO requirements.
Correct.
All right, so, and just to confirm, we have a second for that motion? I
Yes,
missed who that was.
Yeah, we do.
Commissioner Kate, okay, excellent. All right, well, we have a motion and a second.
May I add something?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Just
Commissioner Burrell, go ahead.
quickly, on the fourth condition, it specify, can we specify which property owner? It just says property owner. Is it the southern?
Sure, yeah, let's say with the
adjacent property?
adjacent property owner.
Correct.
We can add adjacent in there. Is that okay?
Commissioner St. John, will you accept that as a
Yes.
friendly amendment to your motion?
Absolutely. That's a really good catch, Commissioner Burrell. Thank you.
I think that language is fine, Jackie.
Great, thanks.
All right, any final comment before we call the roll? Okay, let's call the roll on SP 2121.
Okay, Kinsey,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Seymour,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes,
Burrell,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
and Herrera.
Yes.
Thank you.
okay, I believe that motion carries 9-0.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on now to our second petition this evening. This is ZO 22-21. The petitioner is Wheeler Mission Industries, or excuse me, Wheeler Mission Ministries. Property is at 135, 201, and 205 Southwest Plex Avenue. Request is to rezone 1.31 acres from mixed-use employment to mixed-use medium scale. And I believe we've got Eric Grulich here to present. Are you with us, Eric?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
All right,
As
take
you
it away.
mentioned, this is a request from Wheeler Mission for a series of properties that they own on Southwest Plex Avenue. The petitioner owns 3 properties along the east side of West Plex Avenue. They total about 1.3 acres. They have facilities on the northern and southern buildings and just recently acquired the building in the middle of the property. And they would like to expand their use on the site to this additional building. And so they are requesting to rezone the property from mixed use employment to mixed use medium scale in order to allow for their use to be legitimized and to allow for the expansion. So they are also requesting a waiver from the required second hearing that is required for rezonings. So that is the second aspect of their site. As I mentioned, this site encompasses 3 properties. This was formerly zoned as a planned unit development. As staff went through the planned unit developments throughout the city as part of our rezoning effort with the updates to the zoning code and zoning map, the approved use list for this PUD was kind of manufacturing, light industrial, some office uses. So with the rezoning petition that we did, we recommended that this be rezoned to mixed use employment based on the approved use list for this PUD, which matches, obviously what the existing uses were. Homeless shelter was not something that was in the PUD or that is something that is allowed in the mixed use employment district. However, given their uses on the site and the large amount of space that they occupy, the petitioners are requesting to rezone this in order to allow for that expansion. Most of all of the adjacent land uses to this, to the north and the west and the east, all consist of offices. To the west of this, you have land that is zoned mixed use corridor. To the east of this, you have land that is zoned mixed use medium scale. So the request to rezone this to the mixed use medium scale would not be out of keeping, certainly with the property immediately adjacent to the east, as well as to other properties along the north side of 3rd Street that are zoned mixed use corridor. So this is kind of an overall view of the site. It encompasses 3 buildings and a large surface parking lot. The petitioners would be proposing to remodel the existing building at 201 and possibly even join this together with the adjacent building to the south at 215. So they would use this for sleeping area as well as daycare room, education, office space, community space, a lot of things that just kind of work with the existing business model for Wheeler Mission, not just for providing sleeping areas, but also kind of more education and community outreach and education facilities and uses. So with this, we would be working with them to bring the site into compliance with landscaping standards. So we would be working with them to come up with identifying the existing landscaping. That is something really that is more addressed with the building permit and the expansion, not just the rezone. The rezone request has very specific criteria in the Unified Development Ordinance. Certainly one of those is the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan designates this area as urban corridor. This area is identified as having excellent access to roadways and utilities, transit service. All of those things are certainly present along 3rd Street. This is on a Bloomington transit route. There are sidewalks from 3rd Street leading through Westplex. There are a few areas of curb ramps that are interior to some of the sidewalks along this property frontage. Again, that we would work with the petitioner to fix those to bring them into compliance with current standards. Comprehensive plan for the urban corridor certainly has, and the comprehensive plan as well, has lots of language that gives guidance to look for opportunities to expand social service uses, provide housing for members of our community experiencing homelessness, and highlights these areas as being good locations for those uses due to the existing pedestrian facilities, multimodal access. There were improvements just made immediately to the east of this on 3rd Street to install a protected bike lane. So this site certainly has great access and connectivity from a wide range of perspectives. So the rezoning of this site to mixed use medium scale certainly accomplishes a lot of the goals outlined in the comprehensive plan, as well as helps improve a lot of the needs of the members of our community that are experiencing homelessness. So with that, we are recommending that the Plan Commission approve the waiver to not require the second hearing and to forward this to the Common Council with a favorable recommendation and the 3 conditions that are listed in the staff report. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
If I'm
Thank
sorry,
you,
if
Eric.
I'm, President Whistler, I just want to interject. It was pointed out to me that in the agenda, it says 135, 201 and 205 Westplex. It's actually 215 Westplex is the 3rd address. So it is those buildings that Eric showed, but just for the record, and we will clarify that if this were to go to council before that, that was just a typo. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions, or excuse me, is there anyone, a representative here from the petitioner who would like to add anything to the presentation?
Yes.
Rick Dahl is here from the petitioner.
Oh, I think.
Yeah, I would just defer to Dana Jones. He's the director of the mission there, and I believe he's online here.
Yep, should be unmuted as well.
I am, thank you. And thank you, Eric. Great job. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dana Jones. I'm the director of Wheeler Mission Center for Men here at 215 Southwest Plex Avenue. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have this petition before the Planning Commission today. Wheeler appreciates working in such a compassionate community who desires the best of all, including those experiencing poverty and homelessness. Wheeler Mission exists to provide needed goods and services to those experiencing homelessness in the impoverished of South Central Indiana without regard to race, color, sexual orientation, creed, national origin, or religion. Wheeler Mission assumed the operations of what was the Backstreet Missions which had been in existence at the current site since 2002. And since then, Wheeler continues to be a major provider of services to those experiencing homelessness in our community. Wheeler also not only provides shelter, but also meal service and day room service to the public 7 days a week. These services include showers, clothing, and case management to those in need. We also provide programs of varying lengths designed to meet the need of those seeking additional soft skills and job readiness, so they may be equipped to successfully find employment and housing after experiencing the crisis of homelessness and its various causes. Recognizing that we can't meet this great need alone, Wheeler also collaborates with many other local agencies to ensure that each guest seeking services at Wheeler is able to obtain that which they need to overcome barriers to housing, healthcare, and other of life's essential needs. The purchase of our third building in the cul-de-sac at Southwest Plex Avenue is the fulfillment of a dream to provide adequate space, whereas those we serve can be treated with dignity and respect while enduring the crisis of homelessness and poverty. The new facility, as stated in the presentation, which Eric did a great job with, from the planning department, will provide an area to replace 84 beds from our current facility, thus providing much needed room to prevent overcrowding and assist in preventing the spread of COVID and other communicable diseases. The operations in our newly acquired building will reduce the population in existing 215 Westplex property, where meal service, case management, and residential programs will be located. Once again, we are grateful to serve in Bloomington's social service network by providing help and hope to those who are in poverty and unhoused in Bloomington. Have any questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions from commissioners, either for staff or for the petitioner? Commissioner St. John?
Hi, thank you. This is for the petitioner. Can you clarify the, so there's 42 additional bunk beds, and so that would be 84 people. Is that what you meant?
Correct. So that'll be additional 84 beds will be 84 people.
Okay. And then my second question is well, it's on page 61 of our packet, but it's where you talk about a total of 96 beds. And it looks like it's 54 bunk beds and 22 bunk beds and 8 bunk beds and 12 bunk beds, which add up to 96 beds. Is that really 96 bunk beds?
No, we're only putting 84 beds, which would be 42.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I meant on the other side of the building, the original side on the second floor.
Oh, on the Center for Men at 215 Southwest Plex address?
Yep, yep.
Okay. No, we are not. Those beds that are currently in that facility on the second floor, we're moving the bulk of those to the new 201 Westplex address. So that will take, so pre-COVID numbers in our existing facility was 130. We were able to do a capacity of 130 in the existing 215 building. We had 84 beds in the second floor, which was 42 bunk beds. Those 42 bunk beds are going to now be moved once renovations are complete to the new 201 address, which will open that floor up and for programming operations for those entering long-term programs. So we are not seeing expansion in beds, we're seeing expansion in space in those areas.
I see. Okay, so when the total build out is done between the two properties, the number of beds will stay the same, but you will increase program space.
Correct. That is the goal, to increase program space and emergency shelter space, which is what the new facility will do. It will house our emergency shelter services.
Okay, and is the emergency shelter services in that day room area? Would that be emergency?
That will be a day room area utilized by those using the emergency sheltering services. So those.
Okay. Oh, I see. You're saying emergency in general, not like a special case that you need to take on more people.
No, that'll be the shelter services, correct.
Okay. Okay. So 96 beds total for all of the project together, and an increase in program space.
Correct. Somewhat. That's a little misleading. We have the capacity of 130 in our current facility. We reduced it to 102 because of COVID. So we do have the beds for 130, and that's our pre-COVID numbers.
Okay.
So we'll be able to add those beds back in this facility. So we're just going back to pre-COVID numbers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and this is still a shelter for men, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions from commissioners? Commissioner Kinsey.
I had a question for the petitioner about the services. Are the services primarily, is it addiction and recovery services? Is it job training? What's the nature of the services that are provided?
Yeah, thank you for allowing us to elaborate on our services. We do not provide addiction services here in Bloomington, but we do have addiction services at our Camp Hunt facility on Fish Road, which is in northern Monroe County. But here at this facility, we do emergency shelter. And then we also provide programming for men at this site, which we call a foundations program, which is up to 6 months long. There are life skills training in that program. There's also classes that's taught daily, and life skills as far as financial management, job readiness, and those types of skills are being taught for those. And those are available for all our guests, but primarily the ones that will utilize them most will be our program guests. But those are available to all guests.
Great, thank you for that. And then I just had one other question, and this might be staff related, but I know the specification was to include landscaping standards in the final plan, and I just, perhaps want to ask what are the landscaping standards, and are they different for a more residentially oriented facility? Right now, from my observations on this site, it looks like it's mostly parking lot and no landscaping whatsoever. So I just wonder is there a different expectation for this more residential kind of housing area at all? I don't know.
No, so this basically meets the same landscaping requirements for commercial buildings and parking areas, because that's what it is.
Okay.
So they're required to have 3 shrubs for every parking space and 1 tree for every 4. So we'll just work with them to get in as much as we can around the existing parking spaces. They have a lot of landscaping there now, trees and shrubs.
Okay.
So we're still working through to kind of determine what species they are and how many, and work to bring that into compliance to the best that we can.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from commissioners? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to public comment. Once again, if you'd like to make public comment here on the Zoom meeting, look to the bottom of your screen, look for the reactions button. And once you click that, you should be able to click a button that says raise hand. If your hand is raised, we will do our best to recognize you in the order that your hand was raised. And once you are recognized by Jackie, you will have 5 minutes to make comment. I know that we also have a few folks live in the council chambers for public comment. I'm going to give them a little bit more time to get ready if need be. Let me just look at the.
Yeah, I think we have, okay, so council public comment should be unmuted. And then obviously we won't know their name yet until they say so.
Okay, yeah, council public comment, are you ready?
Okay, my name is Bob Bland. I'm a adjoining property owner and the Wheeler Missions. And I'd like to say last time we were here, get a little echo here. Anyway, last time I was here for the petition, when Wheeler Mission wanted to expand to 120 beds, we was told by Wheeler Missions that, they'll increase security, increase the lighting, and try to clean things up around there. And there's not been anything done for that. And the building that they're talking about remodeling and using was a jazzercise building. And that the lady that owned the jazzercise building was here to petition against it as well, because of the needles and the guys were scaring her clientele and everything. So she eventually closed down because Wheeler Missions is not the best neighbor to have. I'm not against what their goal is, but they're not policing what's going on around there. And every morning, you know, they let these people all out at the same time. And, you know, right across the street from there is a Monroe County School Corporation school. And the petitioner last time they came here said they wanted to get the homeless guys from out of downtown because they were known sex offenders and drug addicts. And, you know, you can't have a sex offenders across the street from a school. Number one, that's a state law. But number two, there's too many people in that area. There's needles on the ground. They graffiti the buildings around there. They throw rocks at the windows. There's feces on the ground. I mean, they sleep underneath the awnings. And, you know, when I call the Bloomington Police Department or resource officers, they say, well, you know, there's not anything we can do to them because if you take them downtown, they're right back out before, you know, as soon as they let them out, you know, so there's nothing the police are going to do for me to help me or any other property owners around there. So I'm just asking if Wheeler Missions, they said last time they were going to try to help us keep the area cleaner and better and help all the surrounding property owners. But, you know, Tri-State Bearings is the other building that they bought. It was an existing business that was back there for years that they finally pushed out. So there's really degrading the property values around that area and making it hard for people to stay in business. So I just want you guys to take that in effect when you're thinking about approving this. Thank you.
Thank you. Have our next commenter from the council chambers ready?
I believe so. Oh, I think he might have muted. Hold on just a second. Oh. Sorry. Should be able to unmute at council chambers. There you go.
Hi, my name's Mary Sutherland. I have been at the location of 1602 West 3rd Street since the early 90s. We have a business there, which we used to have backstreet missions behind us, and we had a great working relationship with them. Ever since Wheeler Mission has moved in, we've had a lot of issues. And we've had several meetings with Dana Jones and the city and other owners back there. These are a few of the things that have happened to us, is that we have incurred a great amount of cost. I've had to put in floodlights for our area so that the police can visibly see what the parking lot looks like. We've taken down bushes. We've put up cameras. We have had the residents of Wheeler Mission come over and open up our electrical box and pull out the wires. We've had them do that to our telephone line, our water meter, where they used to hide their booze in because it's in the ground. They have defecated. I mean, it's not fun to open up the door or try to open up the door to go to work and you have somebody's feces sitting there that you have to clean up. They urinate out there. Their bottles are there. Their booze bottles are there. Their drugs are there. I've seen them do drug deals in the parking lot. And of course, they're in and out real quick. We've had them actually come into our office and harass the staff. The staff do not feel safe. You've depreciated our property values because you cleaned up the city and you put the problem at our back door. They have done graffiti. They have tried to pry open our windows to get inside. It's just not working. And so I know the problem is solved for the city, but it's not solved for us. And it's a constant battle. Dana had promised me he'd have somebody come over like twice a week, twice a day to come over and clean up the yard. And we have to call them on a continual basis. This is not being good neighbors to us. There's probably more, but I can't think of them. I'm a little nervous. We done?
Okay.
So what?
Thank.
Oh, well, let's see. Like I said, there's been trash, graffiti. They have broken the light bulbs over the overhang, not just the light bulbs, but the unit themselves, where I had to get electricians to come out. They broke into, they've done property damage. They broke into one of our lawn keeper guy's trucks, and he's an officer. And I'm going to turn over the rest of my time to my son.
Do we have another
Just a second.
commenter?
Yeah, I think they are muting after just a second. They just need to unmute on their end.
Great.
Okay, you should be set to go.
Okay. Hi, good evening. Steve Sutherland, as the previous speaker mentioned, I am Mary Sutherland's son. Have been very familiar with that area for decades, as they've owned that building for some time. And ever since Wheeler Mission has come by, I have made nightly routines to my property on the way not out of town, within city limits, and had to somewhat police the area, if you will, because Wheeler Mission has failed to do so. Numerous occasions, I have kicked people out. I've caught people doing drugs, caught people urinating, fortunately not defecating on the property. I have witnessed them getting into our workers' trucks, rummaging through them. Again, one of them is your very own police department officer. And I'd just like to comment on a word that, or a phrase that Dana Jones had mentioned, which was, which was dignity and respect. And I just ask, where has he shown the dignity and respect to the business owners around him, the people that he spoke to and said that he would do his part to police the area? Where's the dignity and respect that his tenants are showing business owners, are showing people that are waking up and just trying to do their jobs? And as this previous gentleman had mentioned, I'm all for the mission, if you will, but you just can't do it at the detriment of tax-paying citizens and people just waking up to do their job. So with that, I'll give the rest of the time back.
Thank you. All right, are there any more? I think that was the last of the comment from council chambers. Okay, let's move on then to those here on the Zoom call.
Mr. Kirker, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, my name's Frank Kirker. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm a real estate broker representing Pete and Kim Ellis that own the Ball Fine Print building. And I want to speak a little bit just to the impact on real estate values that I've seen firsthand of Wheeler and the activity going on there. First of all, I do want to say that the work that Wheeler does is important. The community needs it. And as a matter of fact, personally, I support financially two organizations, one called Courage to Change and the other is Oxford House, that work to provide housing for people in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction. So I'm not insensitive at all to the need for this kind of work. But what I wanted to share with you is how it has impacted real estate values immediately around it. I had a buyer who I'd worked with on another commercial property to buy the fine print building. He had reviewed the financial documents and wanted to move forward. He came to visit the property and do a tour in person after having seen it from the outside. In the morning he arrived, there were people laying on the sidewalk in front of the property, and there were a number of people wandering around the street near this property. He summarily decided he didn't want to buy the property. The other experience I had was renting a property in the retail space at 1602 West 3rd Street, which is in front of the Mission. And as part of that process, I interviewed the the folks at the dental office and also at the insurance company. And both of them shared with myself and my prospective client the issues that they had with the mission and the people from the mission. And essentially what they said was, this is work, and that our day starts with us cleaning up. Our day starts with us, if there's somebody sleeping out here, calling over to the mission to get someone to come and help clean it up, move them. But it's ongoing and it's all the time. So it's a real impact on the business that's there. And, you know, I don't think it would be hard to ascribe a cost to it. And I would suspect that rents are already depressed because of the activity that's there. So it's got to hurt. I know for a fact that it hurts the property values and the potential rent from the properties for lease in that space as well too. So that's all I've got. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any additional public comments?
I don't see any more. No chats. Oh, wait, I just got a chat. Hold on. Just a moment. We have one more who'd like to speak. Okay, Kim Ellis, you should be able to speak.
Thank you. We are the owners of Baugh Fine Print Mailing that Mr. Kirker was talking about. I have to agree with everyone else that our day starts turning left onto Westplex Avenue, which is very difficult to do because all of the guests are leaving about that time. They do not use the crosswalks. They cross the street there. And so they are standing in the driveway and also in what the turn lane, or what some people refer to as a suicide lane. And it's dark in the wintertime. We can't see them. Someone is going to get hit by a car there, standing in those turn lanes in the dark. As I proceed to drive up the road, sometimes people will stand in the road, put up their middle finger and tell me, drive around me. And like someone else said, I just want to go to work. That's all I want to do. Just want to drive up the road and go to work. But I have to wait until they decide to move out of the road so that I can drive through. Then of course, when I get there, I look, bucket of feces by my mailbox, several drink bottles full of urine strewed all over, clothing, bags of trash. We also start our day by trying to clean things up, but I'm afraid to touch anything because Wheeler Mission, of course, does not allow any drug or drug paraphernalia, on their property. So they do hide it on our property. We find people out there all the time and we'll say, can we help you? And he's like, oh, I'm just looking for a ring. Oh, I lost my watch over here in the woods. So they're hiding everything on our property. At one time we had a customer come into our shop and she was crying. She said, there's a dead woman down there on the sidewalk. I said, no, she's not dead. She sleeps there every afternoon. No, I know she's dead. I know she's dead. So my husband had to walk down the hill and, you know, kind of tap the lady. She got up. My husband came back up and said, no, she's not dead. She's sleeping. So, I mean, every day. Also, we had to lock our electrical boxes. We've locked our water tap. I mean, I don't care. I'd give them $20 worth of water, but I'm afraid they'll leave the tap run and I'll come into $1,000 water bill. My building flooded. So we also have cameras that go off on, notify us on our phone. They go off 24 hours a day. In the middle of the night, we're looking to see what's going on up there, So, we're afraid to mow our yard. My husband had to get special shoes with really thick soles. We're afraid we're going to step on needles while we're out there. And of course, anything that is left unsecured or outside is gone. So we can't leave anything, wooden pallets, I don't care what it is. And also we do have a 2-person policy at our building. We don't want anyone there by themselves because it's just too dangerous. I can't go there when it's dark unless someone goes with me. So, I'm almost afraid to go to my own business. And also I have to say that, I'm not insensitive to homelessness. I worked, my jobs before this, I worked in the housing authority. I worked with Hope Housing, housing homeless people. I understand that it's needed and people need help, but I feel like we have been overrun within the last 5 to 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment? I don't see any hands raised. Jackie, anyone you see?
additional
Anyone
chats.
else from council chambers?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, last call for public comment. Going once, going twice. Okay, we are back to the commission for any additional questions or comments or motion. Commissioner Kate.
I'd like to ask Mr. Jones to respond to the concerns that we have heard a number of nearby property owners raise. And specifically, I guess I'm curious to hear what Wheeler Ministries is doing, has done, plans to do to address these concerns.
Oh, thanks for the question. And so we have talked with property owners previously, and my question to them is, what do they need to see done? What do they need to see done? And with that, though, I would want to put this point in there, is that it is impossible for Wheeler to police the entire block. It's really impossible for us to do. Wheeler has a staff of 10 people here in Bloomington who do a job, amazing job of helping many, many people. So I recognize some of the struggles and trials that some of our local owners are discussing today, and we help as much as we possibly can. We do send people out to help police the area and provide help there. We've had people out today, as a matter of fact. So we do that. The campus here, the Westplex campus, isn't finished. We're just starting. This is the first leg of that journey. And what this finally will look like, we're unsure, but we have had discussions of fencing the property and those things. And but as far as addressing those things, I think this is healthy to have a public forum to discuss those issues that we're struggling with, because I do think this isn't a Wheeler problem. I think this is a community problem. I really believe that we need community support to continue to do the things that we're doing. Whether it's property owners getting responses from the police department, which we heard several times here, or just being able to have conversations with the city about what and how we will manage homelessness on this side of town. So that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see an open forum with those property owners, us and the city and county together to discuss that and what we want to see that look like. And we'd be glad to do that. But Wheeler is engaged in a huge battle here in Bloomington. When we came to Bloomington back in 2015, we were sheltering a little over 20 people, and that's continually to grow every year, which we do not want to see happen. And so there are other issues and causes that are striking our community that needs to be addressed in a larger scale. So with that, however, I would like to say that those property owners we have discussed today, we have had discussions with them. We do try our best that we can. Would love to see three things. One, public discussions with the property owners, the city, and those in the police department, those involved. I'd also like to see, discussions as far as as we move forward and what our strategic plan will be for our campus site here and how that will look, which will be helped by those are representative today of our business neighbors. So some of the things that we can accomplish through that.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I've got just a follow-up question, and it may be more for staff actually, because it seems like a number of the things that you mentioned are physical things that kind of echo some of what the property owners were raising: fencing, possibly lighting, cameras, things they're doing now that that might be things that Wheeler Ministries could do. The posture of this as it comes before us is on a rezone. There are some conditions attached to this staff recommendation, but Eric, can you talk a little bit about whether any of those types of physical modifications that might help relieve some of the potential burden on surrounding properties could be attached to something like this? And I understand that, and Mr. Jones, I just want to echo something else you said about this being a community issue and a community problem. So there's cost attached to those sorts of things: fencing, lighting, cameras, whatever. And it may be that that additional fundraising or support would need to happen to make that a reality for Wheeler Ministries. But I'm wondering, I'm struggling a little bit with what we can do in the posture of this as it has come before us, understanding that some significant concerns have been raised by the neighbors. Eric, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure, absolutely. And first I want to certainly point out that this is not the last hearing on this. This will be going to the Common Council for hearings and meetings after this. So we can certainly take advantage of the time between now and the City Council meetings to work to see what kind of things we can do to alleviate a lot of these concerns that have been raised by adjacent property owners. Certainly fencing could be something that could be instituted, additional lighting. We certainly want to be respectful of the impacts to adjacent property owners. But, one thing I certainly also want to point out is this is just a rezoning to, look at rezoning it to a certain zoning district. It's not, this use specifically, but a wide range of uses. Certainly with this request coming from a specific petitioner and property owner, we're going to be focused on that one particular aspect, but it's not just them. There are a lot of other things that could certainly move in here, but we can certainly take advantage of this time to try to come up with additional things, as I mentioned, the fencing and lighting, to help alleviate some of those concerns that have been raised tonight. And I certainly expect that this will be coming up again and discussed at the City Council as well.
I will add to that, this type of petition is a 2-hearing petition for this body, the Plan Commission. So they've requested a waiver of second hearing, but you don't have to grant that. If there are things that that we could work on as staff with them in the course of the next month or however long, this body could see the petition again and add appropriate conditions as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Sandberg.
Thank you. I have certainly appreciated hearing the public comment this evening, as I have enjoyed listening to the presentation from Dana Jones. I appreciate the difficulty that you must have in providing services for this particular population, which is not always easy. What I was struck by in your presentation was your new programming is going to include things like life skills, job preparedness. And I think one of the things that in my mind, as a member of the City Council, in addition to being a member of this body, is life skills also include being good neighbors. And I think there needs to be a community discussion, not just in this part of the city, because one of the commenters said that the problems have just been moved over to this area. And I can assure you, we hear some of the same concerns from business owners near the downtown where there are other sheltering organizations. So I absolutely believe that it needs to be a more community-wide discussion about the whole issue of homelessness, being a good neighbor, while you are taking advantages of the many services that we have in this community. There are also some responsibilities that go with that. And so I welcome the opportunity. In fact, Mr. Jones, I would like to maybe sit down and talk with you before we get going on any kind of a community-wide discussion that will involve the city council at a next hearing for this, with respect to how can we all instill in all of the individuals that we work with, be it our business community, our neighbors, and the individuals who are dealing with addictions problems and being unhoused. How can we instill in people this idea that we all need to be good neighbors? Our activities and our behaviors do impact the people around us. And it's going to make it harder for an organization like you, like Wheeler Mission, who is absolutely essential in this community for providing those emergency sheltering services. If the community turns against these organizations because of the problems that they have to face and the costs they have to incur, because we are not having this discussion about what it takes to live cooperatively and respectfully in this community, all of us, regardless of our situation in life. And so I'm not sure, I mean, right before us tonight is the issue of moving this to the city council. And I'm thinking that might be a more robust discussion actually than we can have here at the Plan Commission level. But I certainly would be open if it is the will of this body to hear this again. But I'm thinking the problem here is more intractable than anything that the Plan Commission is going to be able to address. And it might be better to have this conversation at the city council level where we can involve more stakeholders and more problem solvers for this issue that is plaguing not only the city of Bloomington, but many, many communities across the country with respect to the pandemic that we're all suffering through and the increase in the number of people that are dealing with homelessness in our community. So thanks for a very good discussion. It's been very helpful to me as we possibly move this forward to the city council for consideration. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner St. John.
Thank you. I do echo the comments and questions from Commissioner Kate and Commissioner Sandberg. I know that Wheeler Mission does really great work. I also completely understand and recognize the very real day-to-day problems that business owners are suffering. So it's a real problem in that community-wide conversation, as Commissioner Sandberg and Mr. Jones have suggested is very much in need in our community. With that said, I too struggle with how, trying to focus on what we're doing here. And the one thing I do want to ask Mr. Grulich about is the proposed finding under the conservation of property values that is presented in our packet, and wondering how you came to that conclusion or that finding, which is under item E, the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction. The proposed finding is that the proposed rezoning and expansion of services at this facility, so not talking about some other business that could move in, but you actually noted the expansion of services at this facility is not expected to have any negative impacts on adjacent property values. So I feel like as the Plan Commissioner, I would like to ask about that finding.
Yeah, absolutely. So as the petitioner has pointed out, this is not an expansion necessarily of beds on the site, but an expansion of services that they are offering. So in that regard, it's not an intensity of units or necessarily people on the facility that are being increased with this petition, but just an expansion of services and utilizing existing buildings. So that was the main focus of that. But also, again, as I pointed out, this is a request to rezone these properties to a specific zoning district. So does that district and these three properties create any impact on adjacent properties? So if this was rezoning it to a zoning district that had allowed for more industrial uses that might have an impact on adjacent properties, and that would come into play. So really, we were kind of looking at this from, does this rezoning to mixed use medium scale, would that have an impact on adjacent properties? As I mentioned, the properties immediately to the east of this have the same zoning district. The petitioners could literally move right next door and be allowed. They could also move exactly to the west, and those zoning districts allow for this use as well. So the rezoning of this to the mixed use medium scale by itself does not have impacts on adjacent property owners, or at adjacent properties, I should say.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kinsey.
Yeah, thanks for the discussion. I hear a lot of compassion and also in public comment, but also frustration with their work-life disruption in this work. And I wonder if Mr. Jones could comment on a response or a way to manage what I heard from at least 3 of the public commenters regarding the use of space in the woods and in adjoining property to store or stash alcohol or drugs or other things that would not otherwise be allowed or permitted in the facility. Is there a philosophy or strategy for managing that in programming?
Yes. So what we currently do is if we find, and this is where we need discussion with the property owners. And the problem here, part of the problem is we don't know some of who the property owners are behind us. Mrs. Ellis and others know that we have a large amount of ground behind us to the north of us that's completely covered with bush and shrub and trees and other things that they like, that folks will go out and camp in and even create small fires in, that we have to go out and remind them they can't do that, that's against code. And at that point, we're able to get the fire department involved. And of course, that does bring some action on the city part. But we have an issue with camping throughout our community. As City Councilwoman Susan Sandberg said, we have this issue, it's community-wide. Where camping has become pretty favorable over the last year, whether COVID related or whatever. But one thing I do want to stress as we continue to discuss this is a smaller population of people that we serve. Wheeler serves over an average of about 900 people a year, with our average stay in 2019 being 2 days. So the vast number of people we serve are here for a very short time. It's a brief period to see their lives turned around and for them to get back into housing, employment, and things that they need to succeed. So we're dealing with a smaller population of those chronic homelessness, those experiencing chronic homelessness or severe mental illness. And how we deal with that honestly needs more than just, as we've mentioned already, more than just this committee, this commission to deal with. But having said, to answer your question concerning, I'm sorry, can you rephrase that again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. So the question is specifically about the need that, or at least the behavior that folks are spending time outside storing or stashing alcohol bottles or other drug paraphernalia that they're not permitted to have in the space. And I guess it's just a question really about, is there programming that would address some of those issues, more about their need to do this outside of the space? What's the arrangement, or what's the possible solution or an option for managing this, what sounds like storing and space outside on the property?
Yeah, one of the things that Kim Els brought up is that we are, although we're a low barrier shelter, people can come to us as they are. They cannot bring alcohol and drugs into our facility, usually and visibly using alcohol and drugs in our facility or on our grounds. So we obviously are not going to change that policy. because we want a safe place for those who are coming here, and we don't want to deter people from coming. So on that same note, what we do is if we find that if we find people that are not on our properties who are guests, and let me say this too, not all of those folks are our guests. Some of those are camping, and some of those are knowing friends of those who are guests. And so there are people here that are not always our guests. So there are really, I don't know how we could control that or programmatically control that. But for those who are staying our guests, if they're on property loitering or other property that we know of and aware of, I don't like to do punitive things unless it leads to treatment or help or in some other ways to help that person. And in turn from, because we have a lot of substance use, we've got a lot of severe mental illness, that we would like someone to find help. And that's the problem though, is when we deal with these groups of folks that are struggling with these severe issues, how do we ensure that they follow up with that? And that's what we do. So we do refer, we have a robust referral service. We refer to Centerstone and Meadows Hospital. We work with our own addiction recovery programming out at Camp Hunt. So we offer programmatic assistance for those who will accept it. And so not all will accept it though.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Sandberg.
Thank you. This begs another question, that it may not perhaps be the residents or the guests of Wheeler Mission that are actually the ones causing the most problem for the surrounding businesses. I mean, is there some attractiveness to, again, you've mentioned they may be friends who are the ones camping out in the nearby properties. And so this begs the question for me, who owns those properties? And then who perhaps is most responsible for having them cleared out or having them more monitored to make sure that we don't have these unauthorized people who are surrounding the area and causing the most problem for the nearby businesses. It may not perhaps be those at Wheeler, but the attractiveness, if you will, I don't want to use the word nuisance, but it clearly is causing some severe issues for the surrounding neighbors in the business community. And so I'm looking for accountability. Who owns this problem, and who are the stakeholders that can come to the table to help us solve these problems? And it sounds like, Wheeler, you're starting to get blamed for perhaps things that maybe your guests are not the ones doing. But if they are, I certainly appreciate Ms. Kinsey's comment about, what is the plan for making sure that the contraband and the drugs and the alcohol, which are not allowed in the shelter, are not spilling out into the community at large.
Mr. Jones, would you like to
Sure.
respond to that?
I did. Okay, yeah, sure. They're already in the community at large. A lot of the folks we deal with already have substance use issues. They already are, and some suffer mental illness. They're already in the community. And whether it's our neighbors or the ones down the street or the ones further down, they're in the community. This is a part of our community. And how we treat those in our community is important. I understand business owners and the plight that they have, but there's also the plight of those suffering homelessness, those who are suffering mental illness, those who are so enslaved to drug abuse, and that they can't be free of that. So we need to think of that too. So how do we approach that as a community? Wheeler is doing that. We do it very successfully. We offer programs, we offer life skills, we offer treatment, we offer referrals. We do that very successfully. I think part of huge part of the public outcry is because of COVID, that a lot of those bridges between referral services and treatments and have been broken over the past 18 months, which has been a great disservice to those who needed them severely. And so I'm hoping that with the lifting of COVID, we'll be able to see those bridges rebuilt, people being able to make their appointments because their therapists are there. They can see the psychiatrists or doctors and get the prescribed meds that they need. And Wheeler is big into that. That's what we do. We connect people to resources to remove them from, to help them overcome homelessness, addiction, and its various homelessness and its various causes. So that's our program. That's what we do. And so that's the question we've been asked several times here. What are we doing programmatically? That's what we do. That's the whole core of what we do, is to help people enter treatment, receive services to be able to overcome the barriers to treatment and healthcare and housing. So that's what we're trying to do, is move people from the crisis of homelessness to stability. That's what we do every day here. Our case managers up to it knee deep, and every day assisting them move from, and we are very successful. I want to say that again. So the ones that we're talking about are a few of those hundreds of people that we serve every year, are just a few, and it's an unfortunate few. But I don't want us to hold a stigma against that population of people and the struggles that they're enduring over those of a few.
Mr. Jones, can I just follow up on one aspect of the comments that have come? Oh, I'm sorry, I just jumped in. I wasn't even recognized. Let me raise my hand. Sorry about that.
Commissioner Kate, please.
Please
continue.
Thank you, and my apologies. One of the things that I think I heard you say, and I heard some of the members of the public talking about as well, was the communication between Wheeler and the surrounding property owners, and whether that is happening effectively or enough. Do you have a proposal or a reaction to how to address that, or how to improve that? Something concrete, and I'm not talking about the broader community conversation that you and Commissioner Sandberg have been talking about, which sounds very needed, but it also sounds like there's just an issue of maintaining good constant channels of communication with the surrounding neighbors in order to know whether problems are arising, whether they are in fact people at Wheeler who are residents or someone else, and so on. What is your reaction to that, and how that might be improved?
Well, we met with Pete and Kim Ellis earlier this week. One of the things that we've talked about, we started 2019, and I want to reiterate, COVID dealt a blow to these things. Okay, so we're trying to solve a problem that COVID deepened. Okay, so in 2019 we started having community meetings with local business owners, and I appreciated those, and a lot of ideas come out of there. But during COVID and following that, as the year progressed, we kind of lost that. And that's what I proposed to Pete and Kim the other day, to have regular meetings with local business owners, and love to see that occur as we did in 2019. One of the things I would like to see is, before things come to a head, that we reach out and have those discussions like you noted, and that we can try to resolve together and come up with what we can do, work together to overcome some of those things.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from commissioners? I might just, oh, go ahead, Commissioner Kinsey.
Thanks. I'm a little bit perplexed here what we can do. I see the zoning request, and I've read through this proposed findings that staff put together, and by all accounts, you know, this seems like a reasonable request, and it meets the conditions that are outlined in the comprehensive plan, including access to transit and et cetera. But I guess I'm wondering from staff, perhaps, what is it that we could possibly do to address some of these concerns that are appropriate in a rezone request? The only things I'm hearing so far are perhaps boundary fencing, lighting, those seem to be the only possible solution. So I'm wondering if we can get a little more specific in that way. And other than that, I think it does seem appropriate to move this onto a council concern, because I do think this is a much more complex issue than a plan commission can address appropriately. So I'm just wondering, from a plan commission view, what is it that we could possibly request of the petitioner, either as a condition, further conditions, or if we want to hear this a second time, to see if there are improvements that can be made to that.
Sure, excellent question. So, with any land use, you have the ability to look at what are the impacts on adjacent properties and how can you mitigate those? How can you address concerns for a specific land use on adjacent properties? In this case, I think we've talked about some of the suggestions, fencing, lighting, landscaping or buffering. I'm not sure if additional landscaping here is really going to solve some of the concerns that have been addressed. So certainly this is something that we would want to work in combination with the petitioner on. If fencing was something that was going to be pursued, or lighting, with most of the buildings on this site being set further back, they'll only be allowed to have a 4-foot tall fence. Certainly that does help delineate property lines. And keep traffic from mitigating or moving from site to site. So those are certainly something that we can pursue if the Planning Commission would like for us to continue to have those conversations and hear this again at the September Planning Commission meeting. Certainly we can do that. Those are all things that could certainly be on the table for you.
Thanks for the ideas.
Well, let me follow up on that with a couple of questions. First, Eric, it looks to me, looking at the GIS, that the property kind of to the north and to the east a bit is actually City of Bloomington property, Public Works property. Can you kind of I can't really tell. There's a road that goes back to what is clearly a City of Bloomington property. Looks like there's some sort of an easement that forms a bit of a sort of a Y shape. Is that all City of Bloomington property as well?
Yeah, so some of that is old railroad spur line that was dedicated to the city. So it is public right of way. That land that you're looking at just to the north is owned by the Utilities Department. That is zoned MM, mixed use, medium scale. So there is certainly city-owned property and then public right-of-way that is along this north property line.
And how is that property maintained? If there are people stashing drugs or camping out in that public right-of-way, is that something that is, whose responsibility is that to police that?
That would be the police department's job and responsibility to police the right of way, and certainly as well city-owned property.
Okay. And then I guess one more question for Mr. Jones. If it were something that the adjacent property owners desired, would it be possible for you to coordinate either your staff or some volunteers just to do a periodic, whether that's weekly or daily canvassing of the properties, and just to do a little cleanup and make sure that the bottles and needles and such aren't persisting? Or is that just beyond your capacity?
Appreciate the question, Mr. Whistler. We do that now. I know to the chagrin of the business owner, it may not seem like it, but we do. I have a person that goes around daily in his community that picks up trash from the parking lots. And now, once again, we only do businesses that are right up against us, because we cannot do the entire block without, being able to dedicate manpower to that. So we do the local businesses around us as best we can. It is done once daily. Some of the issues that occur may occur overnight when our staff isn't up cleaning up. So when we do, for example, the property to the north of us, we've cleaned out multiple times, but we continue to have people camping out there who have not been guests of Wheeler. So we work on that and best we can in the area that we're in. And yes, I would, we try to help tremendously as much as possible. So I don't want a lot of the discussions thus far sound like we're not great neighbors, and we are working diligently at trying to support not only our guests but our business neighbors as well, and that's very hard to do doing the work that we do. Okay, and so yeah, we're doing that now, and we will continue to do that and continue to offer that assistance if we can.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners or a motion? Just as a reminder, the staff recommendation was to approve the waiver to not require a second hearing and to forward the petition to the Common Council with a favorable recommendation and 3 conditions. 1, the compliant site plan, including all landscape plan, shall be submitted for each location with submittal of the associated building permit application. All improvements shall be installed before final occupancy is issued for each site. 2nd, that a plan for the correction of any deficiencies to existing sidewalk ramps and facilities along the road frontage of the petition properties will be submitted of the building permit application and will be installed before final occupancy. And 3rd, right-of-way dedication consistent with the transportation plan is required within 180 days of approval by the Common Council. So, Commissioner Kinsey.
I'll motion the approval of the waiver not to require a second hearing and forward this to Common Council with a favorable recommendation and the 3 conditions. However, I really want to encourage staff to work with the petitioner to address some of the comments that we heard tonight and determine what else could be added or amended to this before it reaches council's desk to make it a more appropriate proposal for this space. I don't think we can, the zoning request in and of itself is reasonable and meets the conditions in the comprehensive plan. So I don't see a reason to deny it for those reasons, but I do see that this will be a larger concern at the council level and really want to see some of the issues addressed in it.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. The motion is to waive the second hearing and forward to the Common Council with a favorable recommendation and the 3 conditions as included in the packet. We have a second. Any final discussion before we call the roll? Commissioner Herrera.
Yeah, so just to clarify, Commissioner Kinsey, so one of the things is not having a second hearing for our plan commission. That's
correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So this would move the petition straight to council. I might just ask staff to clarify what the timeline would be for having the next hearing at council if we do approve this motion.
I'm not sure when this would be on the council agenda. Council has 90 days to act from the time that the Planning Commission approves it. So it just depends on their upcoming schedule and agenda. Certainly the budget hearings are coming up. I don't know if this will be able to be heard before then or it will have to wait to after that.
So likely would be a fair amount of time before council hears this to continue to work towards some additional solutions, sounds like. Commissioner Sandberg, would
Yes,
you like
that's right.
to
Yeah,
comment
very
on that?
Just
Our
to
council
clarify,
representative?
yes, just to clarify, we do have quite a bit on our plate right now, but we're already discussing having to have special sessions with budget hearings coming up and annexation on our plate currently. But we also must conduct our business such as this within the time frame. And so I'm sure this will go to our council staff and our council president for traffic controlling as to where best to place this on the agenda, but we will get it on the agenda. Thank you.
Great. Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Kate. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Herrera. I did.
No,
think
no.
you had
Okay.
your hand up
Yeah.
first.
So Commissioner K was first. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Go ahead.
Well, my question is just if this information that we heard from the public was well known from the administration and also the petitioner, just to work on my vote. Was this known about the things that are happening around the property, based on what we heard from the different citizens?
Is your question for staff?
For both staff and the person representing the property.
Eric, is that something you can comment on?
I had not heard from any specific adjacent property owners. Well, that's not true. I did hear from Frank Kirker. He reached out about a week and a half ago just to share some general thoughts, but I had not had any conversations with adjacent property owners prior to tonight.
And the other side? Jones?
Mr. Jones, would you like to comment on that?
Could you ask the question again? I'm sorry.
Regarding the what we heard from the public, have you been contacted regarding this situation happening surrounding the Wheeler Mission?
Absolutely. We've been in communication with our local business owners for quite some time, on and off through the years. Yeah. And so we do hear their complaints, and we try to respond to those as quickly as possible.
And could I ask just, if I may, President Whistler, can I have a follow-up?
Sure, yes. Please.
Okay, so I just wondering how have you responded to these petitions from those people, from the neighbors and the business people? Any potential solution or way to work this with the people in your property?
Is this directed back towards me?
Yeah. So how have you responded to those claims?
Well, for the CLIN, we've discussed this already. As far as policing the other parking lots and other property lines, we are doing that. I have a person out daily, and we do that. In the mornings, I send a person out to the front parking lots to clear the parking lots. But the issue is here, I have two people that do this daily, and we have 80 people that stayed with us last night. So we get kind of outnumbered, a couple to 80 to 2. And so we're not going to be there all the time. And so those situations can occur, but we will be out there in the morning again, cleaning up the front parking lot and the surrounding property borders. So what happens between those times and the frequency that we're out there is what I think some of these things are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other additional comments or questions? We do have a motion and a second on the table. So without
I believe
further comment.
Commissioner Kate, you have Juana Firmino.
You know, the only thing I was going to say is because I was a little torn earlier about whether we should bring this back to a second hearing, having the petitioner do some more work with staff on some of these issues, but listening to the conversation, I agree with Commissioner Sandberg and others who have said it's a complex set of issues, but also I don't really know that we will be able to necessarily assess the likelihood that some of the things we might come up with in terms of fencing and lighting and so on in this setting is going to do the job. So having that more comprehensive conversation at the council seems like the way to go, and, especially because it sounds like there is some time, as Commissioner Whistler pointed out, in that between now and when the Common Council hears it, to dig into this stuff and to try to find some solutions. There's certainly, it seems like there's some difference of opinion about how much work has gone on by Wheeler to address some of these concerns. I'm looking at the chat, but I'm hearing what you're saying, Mr. Jones, about the efforts, and there's probably only so much you can do, but some of the things that we've all been talking about tonight are worth not just exploring, but really trying to come up with a set of solutions that will work and make for good neighbors all around. So I think moving it along makes sense. It's otherwise within all of the range of the zoning criteria. So that's it.
Thanks. Commissioner Cochran.
I believe that this is obviously a conversation for the larger community. And I'm not asking Commissioner Kinsey or Commissioner Sandberg to change the motion, but just a thought. And the other thing is I don't like punting a decision to the council, but we could recommend this with no recommendation. I mean, we could move this forward without a positive recommendation, but with just a neutral recommendation, I guess. Because I guess I'm a little torn because these issues do need to be addressed, but not by this body. And obviously, it needs to be addressed by the entire community in a larger conversation. So I'm a little bit torn on moving it forward with a positive recommendation. But again, I don't, I struggle because I feel we're here to make decisions and to move things forward. So I'm a little bit torn. So I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up on a few of my thoughts.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kinsey?
Yeah, as the motioner, I want to make sure I can respond and convey my thinking on that. And I appreciate Commissioner Cochran's perspective here and Kate's before it. And, I have the same concerns too. I think it is a broader, more complex issue than certainly what the Plan Commission can do. And our decision is based on the proposed findings and what's identified in the comprehensive plan and whether this is out of compliance. I think it would be pretty much impossible for us to deny this. So I see where you came from in terms of with no recommendation signals something else. However, I still feel like that's not really the best use of our purpose. We really are designed, our purpose is to really review the property based on the UDO and the comprehensive plan. And I think this is in compliance in that way. So while I appreciate what I think you're trying to communicate to the council, as this is a more complex issue, I don't know if that's the message that will really get through. So that's my thinking around the moving it forward with a positive recommendation, because it is in compliance with, and as indicated in the proposed findings. The only thing though that as I stated more in the comment portion of my motion, was that I think this really does need some more attention from staff in terms of what might be possible. I don't want to just immediately move to fencing. I don't think we can put boundaries up around this larger complex community issue. I don't think that's a good strategy. I think it's much more comprehensive than that. So I'll leave it at that, and perhaps Commissioner St. John has an answer here. I don't know.
Commissioner St. John.
Yeah, I definitely do not have an answer. I agree. We're not the city council. Commissioner Sandberg and her colleagues are really the ones that can take up the larger issue. And here we are as the Plan Commission looking at the findings and the UDO, and it does agree. So I too think we have to, I'm going to support moving this forward. Having said that, we just have to have a larger community conversation about what's going on. And Mr. Jones sounds like he supports that too. It is giant. And I will tell you, there's nothing that can be done on at that property it might help the businesses right there, but it will not help the businesses in the next tier and the next tier. It's happening all over downtown. The exact problems that they discussed, you can line them out and enumerate them, and they're happening all over downtown. And so there does need to be a larger conversation. I don't think it's what we do at the Plan Commission. I don't think it's, I think it's great to talk about that. And I'm really quite pleased that the businesses very much articulated what they are struggling with in a very real situation. But I don't see this as anything we can address other than what is put in front of us with regard to the petition and the UDO. So I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sandberg.
Thank you. I rest assured that when this does come to the council, I will be very vocal about this conversation that we've had here and how respectful we are of our own purview here as members of the Plan Commission, what we are allowed to do by our code. And so that discussion will be brought forward as well, since I'm a member of this body too. The meeting we had just before the council went on our summer recess, we had a representative from the Chamber of Commerce there and basically begging on behalf of the downtown businesses for the city to take action to whatever extent that we can with respect to this growing problem throughout our community. I will say that I agree with Commissioner Kinsey that fencing is not the answer. This is not something that's you can put a border up and it's going to stop all the bad behaviors that we're talking about tonight. And I'm not sure any of us have the silver bullet to know what will. I will say though, we do have ARPA money. We do have a lot of funding at our disposal to assist us with all the ills that have cropped up during the pandemic. And that includes social service organizations, that includes a number of really impacted operations in our city that we can perhaps designate some funding for. There already have been buckets designed in our plan for dealing with problems such as this. And so I am hopeful that when we have a broader conversation with the community about this, we can come up with some solutions that won't put all the onus on Dana Jones and Wheeler Mission. Again, he is doing remarkable work with a very difficult population to deal with, and he needs our support as well, as we also owe the respect and the support for the local businesses that are most definitely impacted by these bad behaviors. Something must be done. I'll be the first to say that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any additional comments or questions before we call the roll? Just as a procedural note, if you feel strongly that we should forward this with no recommendation, if this first motion fails, then we can certainly entertain another motion to forward this with no recommendation. And also, if it fails, I think well, I mean, that's it. Well, we'll get to that if and when it happens. I'm not sure if we'll bring it back for the second hearing, or maybe Mr. Rooker, would you weigh in? Should we be voting separately on the waiver of the second hearing and the recommendation?
No, it's fine for a single motion to encompass both items.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Well, let's go ahead and call the roll, and if this passes, there's no issue. If it fails,
so I caught that Kinsey made the motion, but who seconded it?
Commissioner Sandberg. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready to call the roll.
Okay,
Seymour,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Burrell,
yes.
Herrera,
No.
Kate,
Yes.
Cochran.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-1.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Thank you all for your time. That is our final petition for the evening. Any other final comments or business to attend to before we adjourn? All right, we'll seeing none. We are adjourned. Thank you all.